I am going to be talking about ES335 pickguards in this video. We're talking about size, dimension, shape, bevel, all that. But more specifically, it's going to be in reference to this. Hold on a second. Yep, here it is. Now I bet you're saying to yourself, Nathan, why are you holding that ugly, naked 335 in your hands? Well, there is a story behind it, and we have to sort of get into that before we can talk about the pickguards. Now, this guitar started its life out as an Epiphone, inspired by Gibson, 335 figure top in a raspberry tea color. And the whole goal behind this is that I'm trying to morph this guitar into something like the Gibson Chris Cornell 335 in olive drab green with the Bixby. Never heard of it? Well, here's Greg Koch from Wildwood Guitars.
Strange, intestinal sounds out of this bold Gibson Memphis Chris Cornell ES335 signature instrument. This one in drab green. It's a bold color though, I dig it. With these Lolotron pickups, I tell you what, it's a very unique and delicious 335.
Thanks, Greg. So like I said, I'm trying to convert this guitar into something like the Chris Cornell version, which is no small feat. Now, when this was in its original state, I did quite a few mods. I changed the bridge post, I changed the bridge itself, I changed the pickup rings, I changed the pick guard itself, which is what we're going to talk about here today. I changed the pick guard bracket. I sort of widened the binding. I did all that, and I played the guitar for months. I played it at my church, and I got pretty good use out of it. But then I had to go into this deep dive, and this is the state it's in right now. And as you can tell, the color is completely off. Hopefully you can tell. It's off the back, the neck itself, the headstock, the sides, all that jazz. And if you notice, it doesn't have an Epiphone headstock anymore. I modified that. I even put a veneer on it. I had to modify the nut a little bit, and that's just where I'm at right now. So you don't want to miss, I'm making a playlist, by the way, of all these videos, all the mods I'm doing, how I got the polyurethane off of this. So yeah, it's going to be a playlist of videos of all these modifications, and you don't want to miss it. But of course, the subject today is pickguards, so let's dive right into it. Oh, and I need to let you know, this video is going on way too long, so I decided to split it up into 2 parts, so be on the lookout for part 2. All right, here's where I'm at with the pickguard situation. Obviously the original pickguard, maybe that's not obvious, but this is the original pickguard. This bracket, well, I'll tell you where it's at right now. This is the original bracket here, but the little end nut cap, I still don't know what you call that thing. That is a new one, and I'm going to replace all this once I figure out which pickguard I want. So, pickguards I've gotten thus far. The first one I got was this one. This is from Pickguard Heaven or Chandler Music. I think there's even another site. I don't think it's Pickguarding, but something like that, where they have basically a mirror site that's the same thing. Anyway, I was worried about this one, particularly the bevel. I wasn't sure if they were going to get that right. I put in my special instructions wide bevel, and I even put 60 degree, and honestly this came through and they did a great job. I was really impressed. The only thing is and it does have the this is not glued on, this is the block on the back, they just taped it on there, but maybe I can give you a better indication, but essentially yeah, you're not gonna be able to really tell from here, but essentially this is a smaller guard than what's already on there and what's on the sort of first run of the Chris Cornell 335s that came out. I've done a lot of back and forth comparison, and the pickguard is definitely different on the first run versus the second run. I like myself the first run better. It's a bigger pickguard, and it covers up this, you know, the rod part of the bracket more. Obviously just a personal preference thing. The second pickguard I got, and yes, I've gotten more than one. This is the Montreux Time Machine Collection 2009 Historical 335 pickguard, or short pickguard plain. So the model number or the part number is 8060. And you know, when I found this online, these are kind of hard to find. I think they make them overseas in Japan or something, and there's only a few dealers in the US, but I found this one at Legacy Guitars. So what I'm going to do now is take this pickguard off, and then I'm going to carefully take this pickguard out of the packaging, trying not to damage said packaging. And then we'll have a close-up comparison of all 3 pickguards and see which ones might work, if any, and just kind of where I land. Okay, here's what we got going here. In the middle is the original Epiphone pickguard, as you can see by the attached bracket there. On the right is the Pickguard Heaven Chandler Music pickguard, and on the left is the Montreux. So let's compare these two a little bit. So the bevel, I feel like the bevel is wider on the Chandler one than it is on the Montreux. I do like this thinner black line on the Montreux versus this one that has a thicker one. If you look at the Gibson ones, a lot of them, especially the Chris Cornell version in particular, which of course I'm interested in, it seems to have this thinner second layer of black. So it's like black, thin white, thin black, thick white, and then there's black on the back, but you can barely see that. Yeah, so things I like about this one is the bevel, not so much the middle sandwiched black line, but I mean, it would be acceptable if it was the right size. Speaking of size, let's compare. I'm gonna put the Chandler one on top because it's smaller. So I'm trying to just line these up with my hands here. So you can see the one, the Montreux is substantially bigger or wider in this direction. And they do provide dimensions, which is really nice. So you actually know what you're getting. With the Chandler one, they did not. They just said, I think it's a 2011 pickguard, 2011 ES335 pickguard. So if you don't know what size that is, then you have really no idea what dimensions you're getting. Also to note with this, the difference between these two, you might not be able to tell, but there is, grab something to point with here. There's a bit of excess material here. Yeah, I don't know if the Montreux, I think they have plastic covering the sheet on the back and the front. So it's got a lot of excess plastic. But anyway, if you line these up, you do have a little bit of excess material of the pickguard right here in the dimension where this would butt up against the bridge pickup ring. So I've heard of people having to just sand that off, which is easy enough to do. That's no big deal. But yeah, the Montreux is wider in this dimension versus the Chandler. Okay, I'll put these back in the order I had them. But the Epiphone has the least amount of bevel. They're not hugely different, but I think this is a 45 versus definitely the widest bevel on this one, and then I guess in the middle on this one. Oh, and I did want to point out really quickly, this is the Montreux versus the Epiphone. If you compare the sort of overall width of these pickguards, again, trying to line them up as best I can. The Montreux is on the bottom there, and you can see, hopefully, that, yeah, that one is even larger or wider than the Epiphone original pickguard. So, yeah, the Montreux is definitely the widest overall. I wanted to make another comparison showing you the difference in the thickness between the Chandler pickguard and the Montreux pickguard. So I've got my digital caliper here, and I'm going to turn it on and make sure it's zeroed out. First, the Chandler one, we'll see how thick it is. So it's showing around 2.9 millimeters. Now for the Montreux, make sure this is zeroed out. Once again, if we do the Montreux, we're at 2.6. So about 0.3 millimeters. Not a lot of difference, but there is a difference. And honestly, I think that might have something to do with the fact that this one is showing a little bit more white, because it's thicker in the bevel, it's basically taking off more material on the thicker one. And so perhaps that has something to do with the tiny bit more white that's showing on this one. Yeah, and the bevel on these, again, comparing the Montreux and the Chandler, is pretty much exact. So they do have the same bevel, which I'm assuming is the typical 30 degrees wide bevel, or 60 depending on how you look at it. But yeah, it's exactly the same. But I think, again, because this one, you can even see it in the thickness, the one on top is the Chandler, and it's just a little bit thicker than the Montreux. So I think if I had my perfect choice, I would want to use this one, but I'd want to widen the bevel a little bit. I don't really have a good way to do that. I have something I might try. But yeah, in a perfect world, this would be great. I just wish it had a little bit wider bevel. Now I'm going to grab the guitar real quick and just try them on for size and see kind of what they look like. Here we go. Here's a little comparison. Now I put the bracket back on just with the rod kind of, cantilevered right there. So it'll give an idea of where the pickguard would be situated. You've seen the Epiphone one. Just to kind of look at it again, it's not going to fit perfectly because it's, you know, the bracket's not on there properly. But that is the Epiphone, the original version there. So that's kind of comparison A. And then now let's see the Pickguard Heaven Chandler version. It fits great between the pickups, but you can see that it is smaller just by the amount of the rod of the pickguard bracket that is showing. So that's a good look, and actually looks a lot like the second run of the Chris Cornell guitar. So there's that one, and then finally let's swap it out for the Montreux. Now this one is not going to fit because, like I said, I would have to shave off a little bit of the pickguard right there to fit it in between the pickups, but you can get an idea. You know, honestly, I think, well, just to point out, one difference between this one and the Montreux is the Chandler Pickguard Heaven one does not have a screw hole already drilled right there. So that's something that you'd have to do on your own, which is not a big deal, I guess. But this one does have a hole, and I think it would honestly line up with the existing hole. You just have to try it. But yeah, so this isn't going to be exact idea because it doesn't fit, but basically it would be like that. This one is obviously larger, covers up, you know, most of that rod, and you can't see it, which I kind of like. The bevel's pretty good on this. I'm just debating whether or not I want to toy around with trying to make it bigger. I don't want to destroy the pickguard and have it just be a waste. It was not cheap. So all right, it's the next day. I've had some time to sleep on this and think about it. I've come to the conclusion that I can't really get a pickguard. This one is the Montreux in the middle. I can't really get this size anywhere else, I don't believe. I've looked around, and everyone else selling pickguards for $335 is selling them for different years other than like 2009. I guess that year was a year where they used an especially larger pickguard, and then thereafter, maybe 2011, I started using a smaller pickguard, more of this size, which is the Pickguard Heaven one. So I like this size. I don't think I'm going to get anything better, honestly, and I've exhausted my resources in that department. But what I have done is got some more ideas for to modify this one and make it a little wider. Now, honestly, stepping back from 1,000 feet, you know, elevation, this does seem kind of petty and stupid in a way, but I've got something in my head that I want, and I'm the type of person that I just get like laser focused on that, and I've got to figure out how to make it happen. So this is kind of presented itself as a challenge, and I'm trying to figure out how to overcome it and to get what I want, because I think it's attainable. It's just a matter of stepping through the hoops. Hey, it's me, Editing Nathan. Now, as I alluded to earlier in the video, I did choose to modify one of these pickguards, but I tried a couple of methods that did not work, and so instead of wasting your time going into great detail about those, I thought I would just quickly summarize those so that you would be aware. I got the idea to modify the pickguard in the first place from just researching online. The first thing I came across was on an online forum. A guy took a razor blade, just like this, and he somehow fixed it in place on a flat surface. He took the pickguard and he kind of moved it across the razor blade so that it took off just a perfect 30 degrees or 60 degrees, whatever, of the bevel. And so somehow he fashioned that, and I thought, you know what, I'm probably not going to be able to do that successfully, so I kind of gave up on that. The other thing is a guy took a Dremel tool, and I'm going to show you footage of this. I think his name or his YouTube channel is briley66. He took a Dremel tool with a barrel sander on the end of it, and I've got a pickguard here, by the way. So he took the tool and he just went around the edge of it in sweeping motions, taking off bit by bit and making a smooth bevel to his desire around the pickguard. I personally don't have a Dremel tool, even though they're pretty cheap and expensive to get. I just have never gotten one, although I need to, but I don't have one. And so I could have gone out and tried that method, but I didn't think I would be very good at it. And I thought, you know what, if I slip, I'm just going to just rake across the pickguard and it's going to make a mess and I'm going to ruin it. So I decided against that as well. And so some things I did think I could try was taking a razor blade again and using it sort of as a scraper. So holding this in place somehow and, you know, going across, if you can see this, just going across at the correct angle, or at least guessing, and just scraping the edge. Well, it turns out that was horrible, and it just made it really uneven. In fact, the layers started becoming thicker and thinner, if that makes sense, along the way. So that turned out to be, like I said, a horrible idea. The other thing, and this is sort of harebrained now that I think about it in retrospect, but I was going to take like an artist's compass and try somehow to like use a specific dimension to, you know, use the point of the compass on this side and like a pin, and somehow put a piece of tape or something and mark all along the edge the exact line that I would need to take away, so that I would know for sure that I was meeting that line. Well, as you can imagine, that did not go well either, and I chose to abandon that idea. The other thing that got me closer was using a small file like this, taking the pickguard and using strokes to just go down the bevel in this manner, but it really wasn't efficient, and I couldn't get, it was really localized, so I would, you know, get a certain area of it pretty well done, but then I couldn't make the whole of it sort of even, if that makes sense. So again, just wanted to summarize those failed methods, and now to the method that worked. So the method I think I've settled on is this. This is just a piece of toy block that my kids had in their stash, and this is sandpaper. I don't even know what this is. I think it's 220, but I was just, again, experimenting with it. So I wrapped it up, the block, with the sandpaper, and I started experimenting down here. Now at first I had the sandpaper flush with the edge of the block, thinking that I only wanted to take just the top black layer off. So I was going like this, just on the edge, and I didn't have much control, and so I would slip. And so there's some marks right around this area where, you know, I slipped and made the top of the pickguard scratched. So I didn't like that. So then I thought, well, you know, I can just do like this and focus on that top edge, just that break angle right as you go over the edge and it starts to go down the ramp. So I did that, and I felt pretty confident. I got like, you know, if ignoring these marks over here where I was experimenting and slid and made marks, there's a pretty consistent, and that's a little mark too, but like from here to here, it's a pretty consistent bevel around that top black layer. And so I felt like if I could do that and keep it consistent, that might be my method. And so I went over here and I put this tape down just as kind of a barrier. Now you can see this line right here kind of goes straight and then it curves up a little bit. That's because I was trying to avoid the sandpaper, but essentially I was sanding from here to the sandpaper. And I also realized that on the edges, it's easy to, those go faster. And so you can kind of see the line, that black middle line kind of curve down this way. So I'm gonna have to be careful there, but you can see in general, this edge right here is fairly clean on top of the black. It's a little bit of a bevel. And I thought maybe if that was the worst that it got, I could get away with not even, you know, I can maybe go back with finer grit sandpaper and just knock that down and make it even, take maybe some steel wool or some really fine paper to sort of even that out, but it really just get away with not even having to buff out the top and just keep it shiny. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take, and you can see I've got marks from the black plastic already. I need to figure out what sandpaper works best, what grit, but I think that's going to be my method. And I also need to just verify that, maybe get a standard strip of tape or get my calipers out and figure out exactly what kind of width I'm going for so I can stay consistent around the whole edge. But yeah, so this is similar to the Dremel thing, but just manual and having a little bit more control maybe. So I'm going to try that, and let me show you also one thing real quick. So this is the Pickguard Heaven pickguard, and I was looking at it, and of course it's got the plastic, the clear plastic over the top that hasn't been taken off yet, but you can see the top black level or piece of the plastic, the pickguard, the uppermost top black layer, you know, it obviously has a bevel, and it's going to show a little bit as more of a matte, less polished edge, and I think it does on this pickguard even. So it's like, yeah, I wasn't too concerned of having that. So I'm going to figure out the sort of size I need, and then I'm just going to do it right now. I'm going to take off this outer plastic or the inner one first maybe. So this is it. There's no going back. This is going to be my pickguard. Yep. That's all she wrote, folks. You know it's serious now. This is the one I'm keeping. You guys are witnesses. There it is. And for good measure, let's just do the top as well, if I can get it started. One of these edges here. Come on. Okay, wow, that one took a little bit to get started. So, plastic's coming off. See, it's not even tearing very well. But, yeah, you get the idea. We're going to take this off, and we're keeping this pickguard. All right, it's off. Yay. So here's a little unwanted effect that I didn't expect. I've got sticky stuff, or sticky residue, on some of the sides of the pickguard here, as you can see in the light. So I'm gonna have to take that off with like mineral spirits or something. Okay, I've got a really rough idea of the size of white that I want showing, and it's approximately 2.8. I took this painter's tape, obviously, and kind of marked it and just kind of measured it again with my eyes, and it's 2.8-ish. This is the Chandler pickguard. Comparing that to the Mantra, I think, yeah, we've got quite, relatively speaking, quite a bit to knock off there. Yeah, a couple of, I don't even know if it's millimeters, maybe a millimeter, but that's kind of what I'm going for, is the 2.8, so we can kind of stop and check progress. Now, I've got a piece of 220. I need to mark it, but I know it's 220. I just cut it off the sheet, and that's pretty consistent with the previous sheet I was using, if I'm just going by feel, which isn't a great way to measure, but I think this will be good. So I'm just going to wrap this guy up, go to town, and hopefully I don't ruin this pickguard that cost nearly $50. So here we go. Just again going for that top edge first and see kind of what we get. So see, all that barely did anything. So it takes a little bit of elbow grease. Cleaning off all this debris on the sandpaper so it doesn't clog up. So let's just kind of see where we're at here. And this is very subjective, by the way. I just eyeballed this, but let me see. Feels like we're getting there. I don't feel like I've taken that much off, but I'm showing 3.2 millimeters. Let's go back up here. Yeah, now I feel like that's 3.2. So yeah, this is very subjective, but we are making a little bit of a difference over here. Just trying to keep it even and eyeball it as best I can. Okay, I really feel like this is going well, and it's really not hard at all. The marks that you see on the pickguard are still from the adhesive that's left on there from the plastic wrap. But let me just compare here the Pickguard Heaven one. This is the Mantra on the right, Pickguard Heaven on the left. The only parts I've done so far are like from here around up to here. And it's probably going to be hard to see or tell, but I think it's getting a little closer, this one to that one, as far as the white showing. I haven't touched this over here, this part or the top really. And so we're getting there. I it's coming along. The edges really aren't bad at all. I mean, it looks terrible from the adhesive, but really I feel like I'm getting into a rhythm where I'm just like this. And I'm just holding it at a steep angle or shallow, depending on how you look at it, on that top edge. And I'm not even being super careful. I just, going around like this, and it's doing the job. Taking a little bit of elbow grease. But yeah, I'm going to keep going. I don't think I'm going to show it all on camera because it's just going to be boring, or I'm going to have a ton of footage with a lot of time lapse. But the corners, I guess, are a little tricky because it's hard to keep a constant motion around with the grittiness of it, but I still feel like that's not too bad either. So just giving you sort of where I'm at right now. It doesn't look a ton different, but I believe it is. So I'm gonna keep going. Okay, update on where I'm at with this thing. I have taken my piece of wood, my cylindrical piece of wood and sandpaper, and gone around like I showed earlier a couple times, well, a lot of times here and there. I took breaks and then came back, reevaluated, did some more. So over, I don't know, the course of an hour maybe, I got it to where I'm pretty comfortable with it. So just for comparison's sake, there's that one, the Montreux, and then here is the Pickguard Heaven one. So pretty darn close. I even measured with my calipers, and it's really close. And if I ever want to, I can just do what I did some more and take some more material off. So yeah, there is that. Now, like I said, I'm pretty comfortable with it as far as the amount of white showing. So now what I've got to do, let me get the guitar. Hey, just want to say thanks for watching. You know what I'm going to say next, don't you? Please like, share, subscribe, comment. I'd appreciate it. Later, Gators.